Good morning to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here. Monday now, the 12th of February, 2024. I am up in Elkton, Maryland in a hotel on my way up to New England for this winter storm that's coming. Going to be pretty impactful. We're going to get some coastal flooding. Definitely going to cover that side of it. And there's going to be some heavy snow as well. Plowable snow, as they say, in that region. But there's been some interesting shifts in the guidance south with some of this activity, so that's going to make things more interesting for places farther to the south. I'll discuss that, and then of course we're going to take a look at the upcoming hurricane season. Interesting data coming out over the last few days from the North American Multi-Model Ensemble, the NMME, as well as the Euro. Different people tweeting this information out, and it's starting to at least look a little bit more likely with each passing week that we're going to have a very busy hurricane season ahead of us. So we're going to continue to look at those puzzle pieces as well as we start our week. All right, good of you to join me. Let's start off with a satellite animation, kind of set the stage with our different players here. Look at this very strong subtropical jet coming in from all the way out in the Pacific, delivering a lot of moisture and energy, and that is bringing some heavy rain. We even had some severe weather. Yesterday, we had snow in parts of Texas. Crowell, Texas, I saw several tweets about that, some very heavy snow there. And all this energy is now going to come up and combine with some cold air to give us a pretty good bout of snow and a nor'easter, the Miller B type system as we call it, coming off the mid-Atlantic, a rapidly deepening but quickly moving low pressure area that'll scoot out to sea up here and bring coastal flooding to some of the areas of eastern Massachusetts, including the islands, and then some very heavy snow, wet snow, because it's not bitterly cold, so the snow ratio is not quite as high. It's not going to be as fluffy. It's going to be that heavy wet snow, so be careful if you're going to be out there shoveling it. Maybe get somebody to help you do it, or hire the neighborhood kid or somebody with their shovel, whatever. Just be careful out there, all right? Not overly cold, and so the snow not very light. All right, as such, with all the activity in the east, winter weather advisories, winter storm watches, warnings in parts of, what do you even call this area? It's parts of the Mississippi Valley, the Ohio Valley, not quite the south, whatever. So we'll just call it from Oklahoma, northeast through Kentucky, and then up here in the northeast, we have winter storm warnings, and in the coastal areas, we have the storm warnings. That is a marine advisory for storm force winds. And this is going to be a pretty potent system. And then, of course, these greens and reds down here, we do have some flash flooding concerns. And then the yellow would be your severe thunderstorm watch. So a fairly active pattern in the eastern United States as the west, finally, after all that activity last week with that big atmospheric river event, everything is calming down for the time being west of the Rockies. So here is what our storm system looks like on the high resolution rapid refresh model, also known as the HUR. People call it that. It is a convectively allowing model. That's very helpful, of course, especially during severe weather, warm season kind of stuff. But it also helps us because it is a high res model to see storms, winter storms even, and get an idea of their track in a higher resolution than the global models can give us. So with all that being said, this is the 12Z edition, still rendering out the frames, but this is, plenty. We've got plenty because this is going to be a pretty fast-moving storm. It'll be in and out by tomorrow afternoon and evening for New England anyway. But you can see as it is evolving. If I can talk this morning, there's our snow indicated by the different colors there, the blues. Then any darker shades or gradients of blue would be your heavier snow. Could be darker snow if it's still dark where you are, but whatever. And then this is all the rain and embedded thunderstorms that the HRRR model is depicting. So let's put this into motion. You see what happens, and the beauty of this is it's every hour. You get hourly, it comes out every hour, and then you get hourly frames. I really like that. So watch as everything progresses. Lots of rain for the southeast. And then finally we start to get some snow on the back end through parts of Tennessee and Kentucky. The low pressure, the surface low, if you're keeping track, right there. And that translates through to the coastline where through different dynamics of the water and the atmosphere, the heat from the ocean, and even though it's cold, there is some heat there. It's obviously warmer than the atmosphere. You get the dynamics in place to give you a pretty potent nor'easter. Look at that comma shape. You've got the blues, which is your heavy snow, eastern Pennsylvania, Maryland, where I am right now. You'll have some snow here in Elkton, it does look like. Maybe even DC there. See, look, pretty heavy snow. These gradients, again, the darker colors of blue right through here, that's the model picking up heavier snow rates. So be sure to check out your local National Weather Service homepage. We'll look at that more in just a minute. I'm going to point out over on this page how you can dial up your local information because it is changing. This system's got a couple tricks up its sleeve. But look, it gets off the coast, that low does. It starts to rapidly strengthen near the benchmark of 40 north, 70 west, south and east of the islands there by a good distance, Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard. And a pretty good northeast flow, easterly to northeasterly flow right into the eastern Massachusetts coastline. And we're going to look at that too. Scituate, Marshfield, Hull, some of those areas that are used to seeing big waves and surge events from these nor'easters. Yes, you could have some minor to moderate coastal flooding in those areas. Then the low pulls away by tomorrow afternoon and evening, but not before dumping a pretty good amount of snow across the northeast. And that's going to be a pretty good population center that gets whacked by this. And with the farther south track of the low, New Jersey through a good chunk of Long Island here, getting in on the action, as well as eastern Pennsylvania, all of Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, parts of Vermont, New Hampshire, and southern Maine. But the heaviest looks like it's going to be much more to the south here than we thought maybe even yesterday, by maybe 100 or even 200 miles. So you're going to trim off the snow to the north. Those values are going to be less, and it is going to probably be increasing some of these values farther to the south. So that's the storm system. It exits out into the Atlantic, and then, just kind of seasonably cold, nothing real bitter and ridiculous behind this system. It's just the way the pattern is. But a pretty dynamic system overall. Again, the very heavy rain in the south, some severe weather, but nothing widespread and nothing too alarming. Again, just pay attention to your weather forecast with all the distractions in the world. You got to look at the weather every once in a while. And this is a really good tool, a very useful tool. Weather.gov. People ask me all the time, what's your favorite app for tracking the weather? Well, it's a website, weather.gov. That's what I like to use. That's just me. An app, though, that I like is, of course, RadarScope. And most people that track storms, they know all about RadarScope. And that's for keeping up with radar and, real-time weather. But in terms of advisories and information, just like we do during hurricane season, wanted to make sure people understand the impacts. This is a great resource. So let's just click on eastern Massachusetts over here. Here are all your winter storm warnings. That's the pink. And you got your legend over here of what everything means. We have a high wind warning. Storm warning is the purple. There is a coastal flood warning. All kinds of shenanigans are going to be happening up here in relation to this storm. And let's say that you're interested in the Scituate Marshfield area as an example. You can go and click on eastern Massachusetts, or you could just put Scituate right up here in the little bar. My tool that I'm using here won't let me because I have hotkeys that are assigned, and the letter S is one of those hotkeys. But you get the idea. You can put Scituate, you can put Boston, whatever the case may be. Or you can just use this map over here, their interactive map, find out where you're interested in, click on it, and you're good to go. You get the point-and-click forecast, but, and this is what I wanted to point out, the forecast discussion. Very, very helpful. 7 a.m. update, so it's updated regularly. All kinds of highlights, and then the details. And then for my purposes, I want to know what's happening for the coastal problems, and they mention that all through this area here. So very good information explaining what is happening. And then they actually have a resource here back over on the home page for this area of the coastal flood warning information. So it's all right at your fingertips. All the areas that are going to be affected, it's all here. Easy to understand overall. And I think you should take advantage of it, all right? You can use this map here. once you start basically zooming in from the national map. And this is applicable New Jersey, wherever the case may be, and even here in Jersey, coastal flood warning. So you folks from Belmar, south to Atlantic City, all of these coastal areas along the barrier islands, this is going to be an impactful storm for you as well. The astronomical tides are running a little bit higher than normal right now. And so there's a little bit of an elevated water level to begin with. And then on top of that, wind-driven surge, just like we see in hurricanes, except this is an extratropical system. It's not warm core, it's a mid-latitude storm. Nevertheless, wind blowing over water towards land gives you a storm surge. So just be mindful of that in eastern parts of Jersey, even down to Delaware. And again, you can read the different warnings and you can get more information that way. Just pointing it out for you. And then, of course, in the winter storm warning areas, if you're interested, how much snow am I going to get? That's also pointed out very nicely in some of these winter storm warning messages that they put out. Lots of information here as well. Then, of course, you can just get the point and click where it tells you, like wherever I click, this is up in northeastern New Jersey, northeast central Jersey, inland a ways, 8 to 12 inches Tuesday. So lots of good info here. You can use these maps to scroll around, see what's going on. And let's just look real quick and see what they're talking about for Manhattan, right? Downtown New York City, 38 degrees there now. Tomorrow, 5 to 9 inches right in the heart of the city. No more worrying about how many years it's going to be until it snows again. You're going to get it tomorrow, it does appear. All right, so that's very helpful there for you. Now, switching on to hurricane season stuff. I know it's February. Why are we even talking about something that's far away? Most people are only concerned about what happens to them. Yes, that's totally understandable. But the background state, the overall pattern, that's very important, because if you have more potential hurricanes coming, then the risk for everybody is overall a little bit higher. We will never get to the point, I don't think, not in my lifetime, probably not even in the next 50 years, beyond my lifetime, where we can say in February there's going to be a hurricane in Texas in August. That's just going to be really tough for the models to figure out, because there's just so much chaos. But one thing, and variability, chaos and variability sometimes synonymous. But one thing that we can look at are patterns. What gives us a busy hurricane season? One of the markers is a warm Atlantic. Let's use blue to make it pop better. A warm Atlantic in this sort of horseshoe on its side pattern, with the concentrated warmth relative to average, especially down in the deep tropics and into the northeast Atlantic subtropics area, right? And then the other part of it is not this. In other words, not an El Nino. We're in El Nino now, but it is fading. It's already happening. And that typically gives us the background state for a busy hurricane season. Warm Atlantic relative to average, especially in the deep tropics, and not an El Nino. La Nina, helps, but basically the big part is not an El Nino. That's the big part. That's the most important, it does appear, because El Nino creates upward motion down here, lots of convection. You get rising motion, it cuts across. Basically, you get a lot of shear. That's the simplest way to describe it. So, what have we learned over the last few days? This is from Dr. Phil Klotzbach, the NMME, the North American Multi-Model Ensemble. Average outlook for the peak of the Atlantic hurricane season calls for a robust La Nina. So what I just tell you, I told you, you need a warm Atlantic relative to average. That's there. Put a big check mark. And you need not to have an El Nino. In this case, it's actually La Nina. So cooler, so you'd reduce convection, reduce the wind shear coming out of the deep tropical Pacific. That's also a check mark. Both of these get checked. Huge pattern signal. And then the rest we need to just wait and see when we get there. Where are the areas of high pressure to steer everything? Where do we get our main formation areas? Stuff like that. There is a little bit of guidance that we can look at with precipitation anomalies from these computer models. And this is a little bit concerning, because the greens and the gradients of green suggests a track of increased moisture presumably from tropical waves and maybe tropical cyclones, all across the deep tropics through the Caribbean and into the western parts of the basin over here. Last year, these tracks were much more like this. And I'm going to find them. I'm going to do some research for that for next Monday when I'm back in my office. Because a lot of people are going to ask, well, what did it show last year and how good are these models? Well, let's take a look because it is all out there. I'm going to use Storm 2K archives and a couple of friends of mine that I know over there. And I'm going to build the proof to show that there is some skill in this. Again, we're not going to know for sure. Does Wilmington get a hurricane? I don't know. Does New Orleans get one? I don't know. But this suggests there's going to be a lot of activity coming across during the peak months through September, August, September, October. And that is a little bit eye-opening. We should take stock of this and make sure we're ready, right? And Ben Knoll mentions that, our good friend Ben, who's of course busy watching stuff for the snow in the Hudson Valley, where he hails from, even though he's in New Zealand now. Very popular in the Hudson Valley is Ben. But he also tweets out these very interesting climate model maps that he makes. And the ECMWF, people regard this as a very strong, superior model overall, the climate model system with it. The daily stuff, the ensembles, the ECMWF, great model. It's also showing warm Atlantic main development region and the loss of the El Nino and its precipitation pattern. This goes out to June, and as Ben says here, we'll enlarge the tweet, there is a big signal for above normal rainfall across the Atlantic around the start of the hurricane season in June. So maybe we get started early again this year. We'll just have to wait and see. We're, a little bit over 100 days away, and that's not forever when we're talking about these big signals. Not the everyday weather. Again, that's very important. This is like the big signal, the big patterns, and this has been very consistent amongst all the climate models since the end of last year. And if anything, we're just seeing a more robust signal as we get closer to the spring and the summer. And so we'll see, sometimes the stuff can reverse and you get a different outcome, but there's no reason to believe that there would be something that would come along and change that. We're not going to suddenly go back to El Nino. Very unlikely. And the Atlantic isn't going to just suddenly cool, barring something that we just have no idea is coming. But that's what causes the randomness of it, and that's why we can't say with 100% certainty that anything's going to happen, right? Absolutely. But these signals are not to be ignored, but they're not to be worried about either. Turn this into action. Do something. And we'll talk about what to do in the coming weeks and months to help get you ready, especially all the people that have moved to Florida and elsewhere along the South post-2020 and all of that took place, right? A lot of people have moved to the South, and they might not have hurricane experience. So we're going to talk about what to do and how to at least be better prepared. All right? What am I going to do? Well, today, at least for today, not worried about hurricanes today, instead the nor'easter. This is a great shot from the drone of the White Cliffs up there near Plymouth from a couple years ago when I was up here in January. And this is our thumbnail for our live coverage. It'll start around noon Eastern time on YouTube. Again, I'm going to be leaving the Elkton, Maryland area, and which is, let's draw on it, Mark, right there. And I'm going to make my way up with my colleague Marcel, and we are going to head up, let's back this out a little bit, through the western sides of New York, and then jump on 95 here in Connecticut. And our plan is to set up some equipment over here in Scituate and Marshfield, if I can get the mouse to work for me. One of my favorite areas to document coastal nor'easter impacts up here. And then we're going to stay tonight somewhere, I'm trying to remember exactly where the hotel is, somewhere in this area, if I'm not mistaken, and ride out the storm there, do some reporting on Fox Weather, of course, live stream the whole thing. We'll be live starting from noon today until probably 7 p.m., something like that, tomorrow night, nonstop. So be sure to check us out on YouTube and see what's happening. And then the rest of you that are up here, I look forward to seeing what you get in terms of your snow report. So please Tag me over here on the Twitter at HurricaneTrack. We're also, of course, on YouTube, so let me know in the comments how the snow and the storm is going for you, especially once we're live as well. And you can join on Patreon for free. You don't have to pledge an amount or support us with an investment yet. You can do that whenever you want to. And you can post some thoughts there on Patreon. We have our Discord attached to Patreon, all kinds of good stuff. Social media, if you use it right and just don't worry about all the nonsense, can be a very powerful and very helpful tool. And I love it. It's a great thing. And like this video, I can get this video out to 1,000 or so people. That's not bad. I'll take it. All right? Very good. Well, that's a good start to my day. Hopefully you're updated from my update on what's happening as we start the week. I'm going to get out of here. Marcel and I have a big day ahead of us, so let's get on the road. Again, we'll start streaming live at noon Eastern Time until 7 p.m. or so tomorrow night. All right? From all of us at Hurricane Track, thanks for tuning in. We do appreciate it. I'll see you in a few hours as we travel to New England on our YouTube channel.